Good morning, Yang Berbahagia Datuk, and also Excellency Prof. My name is Major Prabhakaran from Syndicate 3. I have two questions. My first question is, what role does the soft power as Malaysia play in strengthening the security cooperation between the EU, ASEAN, and on how Malaysia can these particular things will be leveraged effectively. That's my first question. And my second question, in what way can joint capacity building initiatives enhance the effectiveness of security responses to, especially in natural disaster and humanitarian crises in the region?
Thank you, Major Prabhakaran. Can we have the next person?
Thank you, Major Durkis from the United States. Thank you to the panel for cogently and coherently addressing, if you will, the panda in the room. As ASEAN views the European Union's cohesive and united response, which has been integral to Ukraine's survival, what lessons has ASEAN gleaned from both that response and the Ukraine war for effective ASEAN internal dialogue, and as ASEAN countries evaluate the security threat in the South China Sea and Taiwan, beyond procurement, which we acknowledged as not being sufficient, whether it be force structure, tactics, or disposition. And additionally, as ASEAN countries potentially look to either reshore or friendshore, how have they viewed the EU's relatively impressive decoupling for the EU being energy as ASEAN countries evaluate their economic security? What lessons has ASEAN learned, and how does the EU and ASEAN view potentially working together to support each other's resilience? Thank you.
Are you directing the question to any particular panelist or just a general question?
Just general question.
All right, so any panelist. Can we have one more last question from the first round? Yes, please.
Good morning, sir. Assalamu alaikum. I am Commander Musa Singh from Syndicate 12 from Bangladesh Navy. Recently, we had an opportunity to visit Indonesia for security study, and we had a lot of discussion. My one cohort fellow, he has approached for this kind of a traditional partnership regarding ASEAN with someone. Anyway, so my question actually to go to Professor Adam, sir, that for traditional tie-up with ASEAN and European Union, is there any legal obligation or any blocking wall that can hinder this kind of tie-up? Because we learned that ASEAN is not made for this kind of military tie-up or something like that. Rather, it is going more in friendship bonding and economic prosperity. So that is the question, that is there any more obligation or any blocking wall to develop this kind of tie-up for traditional security issues? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I hope you had a good time during your Kajimatan. Right, anyone would like to, maybe we go to the first question. Anyone would like to respond?
Right. Okay, thank you very much for the questions. With regard to soft power, even though we are from Ministry of Defense, we look at this as also an opportunity, not only hard power but also on soft power. And we have seen many examples where we work on the soft power approach to get support and also to get partnership assistance from member countries. I think this is where for us in Ministry of Defense, we look at not only on traditional security partnership but also on non-traditional security partnership. And actually this is where we have more opportunities for us to work with, and we have more partners that would like to work on this approach. And we have been talking about capacity building, and it is something that almost all our bilateral defense engagement, from courtesy calls to scheduled meetings, we have been talking about this. And if we look at on the climate change and natural disasters, I think Malaysia has been very active, and we have played, we see a significant role. I think most recent, we assist Turkey during the earthquake. We have sent our field hospital, and in fact before that, in Bangladesh, we also have established field hospital there. Is one area on military medicine, which we are now also giving more priorities, especially after the COVID-19. We have seen the military role, the military involvement in that pandemic, and even we also have received suggestions from Ministry of Health how the military could contribute, for example, in terms of medical supplies, oxygen tanks, which was a requirement during the peak of that pandemic. So I think as we go towards the future, we can see the role of the military, the secondary role of the military, the Malaysian Armed Forces are getting bigger and bigger. I think this is where we require the support from the government to give higher priority to Ministry of Defense, and also for our military. And also looking at our partner countries, including EUs, for us to work together to develop the capability and the capacity so that we could play a significant role for us to face current and future challenges. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Saripul. I think Major Prabhakaran, you have another question that was. So anyone would like to address to the second question by Major Prabhakaran? So I suppose both, you have covered both. Datuk Raja, you want to highlight? Right, now we come to the second question that was by the officer from the United States. Prof. Adam, you would like to? No, I know yours says good question, but do you want to address the? And also maybe Your Excellency, you want?
Right. Okay. I guess I address all my views about all three questions. So I think just to backtrack a bit, just Tuan Saripul mentioned about environmental climate change, how that will impact environmental damage, and that is non-traditional security. But it has linkage to traditional security in the sense that as the seawater rises, for example, we know Arctic ice is melting. Over years, the sea level will rise. Again, that will have some impact to our military installations that are near the shores, our navy bases, ports, harbors, and so on, or even military camps or air bases that are near the seaside, seashores. You will see the impact of erosion of the coastal areas. And over time, it will eat into your naval bases, into your air bases, into your camps. And that will have impact to how you will need to redeploy, reposition your locations in different, your bases and so on in different places. So you can see there's sort of crossing the line between non-traditional security into traditional security, because that will have impact to how the military power performs its job, right? So when I talk about the Russia-Ukraine war and what kind of lesson it has on ASEAN, I think this is what I was alluding to also in my talk just now, in the sense that what we are seeing, the war in Europe, as I mentioned, there's cyclical events throughout the world history. There will be peace, there will be war, and so on and so on. So we have not seen great powers going to a total war as you have seen during First or Second World War, primarily because of the presence of nuclear weapons. So great powers would not try to go to war, but you can see they will still try, especially in the context of Ukraine. How you can see NATO, European Union, and the US has also come in to assist Ukraine to fight the war against Russia, even though Russia has nuclear weapons. So picture what will happen in that context. If the war will still go on, traditional security issues, but it will not escalate between great powers. So what kind of lessons that we can see in ASEAN is a sense that even though there are presence of nuclear weapons, it will not deter superpowers or great powers to initiate a war. So, and it will also not deter another superpower that has nuclear weapons to assist another country that has been invaded by another nuclear power, as long as they do not go into direct confrontation with each other. So that is the key lesson learned, is that nuclear deterrence works if those countries have nuclear weapons, but for smaller countries, lesser powers that do not have nuclear weapons, you will still face the dire threats of the potential of invasion or intervention by external powers. But at the same time, if you already have partnerships, traditional security partnerships with other nuclear powers, then at least you do have some guarantee that, if things really go bad, someone will come in and assist you in that sense, right? So in terms of what I'm trying to allude to, ASEAN members, not ASEAN as a whole, it will be difficult. ASEAN members should be very worried about what's happening, the lessons happening in Ukraine, and potentially, as I mentioned, a war may erupt in our backyard over Taiwan. China wants Taiwan back, there's no question about it, right? So every day you have heard about the aircraft, PLA, Navy strips doing exercise around Taiwan and so on. And they are building up the skills, the knowledge about the local environment and how to potentially conduct expeditious operations over Taiwan in the future. The question is how far the US will come in to assist Taiwan, right? So if that happens, there will be a war, and of course Southeast Asia right in the backyard. With South China Sea, major sea lines of communications, both sides will try to interdict these sea lines of communications. Straits of Malacca, South China Sea will be major clash points. After PLA and the US Navy will try to fight for sea control of these areas. And of course, literal stakes will be tracked into that environment. So lessons learned is that, as I was trying to say, we must also build up our own traditional security capabilities and capacities. And why not by partnering with with other powerful countries that have better capabilities and capacities than ours. So to build our own technology and know-how, so that we have prepared for the worst situation. Right? It may or may not happen, it may or may not be dragged into a violent conflict, but at least we must be well prepared for the worst scenario. Right? So that third question about how ASEAN, if there's any law that says ASEAN can or cannot talk about traditional security issues related to defense, to military. I think ASEAN, after the end of Cold War, has evolved. We have seen the East Asian Summit, we have seen the ASEAN Defense Ministerial Meetings, ADMM Plus. So you can see ASEAN has been slowly moving into defense and security issues. Okay? But all these platforms are still about dialogues, about meetings, discussing key events, topics, and so on. I myself, under my Sender CDs together with MiDAS, are also involved in the network of ASEAN Defense and Security Institutions, NADI and ADI. We are also seeing annually we have 5 workshops, annual meetings. We have seen topics talking about geopolitics, topic about the upcoming NADI workshop will be in Vietnam, Hanoi. It's going to talk about US-China rivalry, but the geopolitical competition in Indo-Pacific and what kind of impact that would have on ASEAN, and of course what ASEAN defense ministers meeting, ADMM, ADMM Plus can address the issues. So we are already talking and thinking about traditional security issues. It's not that ASEAN have not attempted to go into that area, but it's still in a very early stage where still talking about dialogues, forums, and meetings. So it's not a big taboo subject, but as I mentioned, ASEAN as a group, whether they would want to engage with EU as together to build a traditional security partnership, again, that will be more difficult because within ASEAN members, there will be members that do not agree to that kind of policy or strategy, and they will not say yes. And the ASEAN way of business doing business is consensus decision making. Everybody must agree before they can move forward. So that will be a big stumbling block for ASEAN, right? And that's why I talk about traditional security. We can start with cyber defense and so on. So it's not talking about very traditional, sensitive military technology, military expertise, but on a new area, the everybody is still is not so sensitive as it is, and it would be an area where the city can make a difference for certain ASEAN members. Right, so I hope I answered all three questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Adam. Before we go to the second round of questions, I think Major Prabhakaran, you asked about soft power. Perhaps you can speak to our colleagues from the Foreign Ministry. Datuk Raja is here. Also, Datuk Khalid is here on Malaysia's soft power. Correct? If I'm not mistaken, we are also promoting cultural diplomacy today in regards to soft power. So can we have the second round of questions, if there are questions? Yes, please. Yeah, Prof, you want, Datuk, you want, okay, so hold on, yeah.
Hello, thank you. Just to answer the very important point which was raised by the EU ambassador and also a friend from the US. It relates to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. You look at our Malaysia's voting pattern in the UN, it's quite clear. We've supported all of the resolutions against this because obviously it is a violation of international law. You can't have one country invading the other, and that should not happen. However, we've not sanctioned any Russian personalities for a very simple reason. We don't have laws which will permit us to do it. We do not have laws to give effect to unilateral sanctions. We do have laws to give effect to UN sanctions given effect by UN resolutions. That's all we can do. So if we, unlike Singapore, our neighbor, which has taken steps to sanction Russian personalities, corporations, so on and so forth, we won't be able to do it because if we do, then what happens is these people, they sue us, they sue the government, and 100% of the time they will win. It's quite clear. So we're not able to give it back to that. So that's one. Two is, I would be very hesitant to, before I go there, what are the lessons learned? I think from a purely realistic point of view, the lesson to be learned is that, as Scott, to paraphrase Scott Fitzgerald, who said that the rich are very different from you and I because we are rich. The powerful are different from you and I because they're very powerful, right? And powerful nations have different interests compared to smaller countries. This is the reality. Of course, like the EU ambassador said, countries like his own, Greece and Malaysia, we try to seek refuge in international law as much as we can, but sometimes there may be a situation where this is a triumph of hope over experience. Thank you. And for a country like Malaysia, we have to deal with the world the way we know how it is, not the way in which it should be. We have to be realistic and very practical about it. And the reality is that powerful countries have very different interests from other countries. speak of Russia's actions, which are clearly in contravention of international law. The US's invasion of Iraq is also in contravention of international law, because it had no UN sanction. This is the reality. So you draw. So if you were to draw a parallel between the two, there is a case to be made. I'm not saying that I support this point of view. There is certainly a case to be made that the US and Russia have been treated very differently in the context of the application of international law. It's not a moral judgment. I'm not taking a position in terms of whether it is right from a moral point of view or not. So that's the second. And I would be very hesitant to draw a direct parallel between Russia's actions in the Ukraine and what China may potentially do in Taiwan, for a very simple reason. For Malaysia, it's very clear we have a one China policy, and we have a clear and consistent view of what the one China policy means. It means that Taiwan is an integral part of China, and there is but one China. So, what does this mean? In practical terms, it means that Taiwan is as much a part of China as Sabah, Sarawak, Selangor, Negeri Sembilan, or Kelantan, Terengganu is to Malaysia. So what the Chinese potentially will do in Taiwan is an internal matter for the Chinese. It's very clear. Taiwan is not an independent country. So people who think that there is a parallel between Russia's actions in Ukraine and what the Chinese potentially have done, to me, has no clear understanding of either international politics or international law. So to us in Malaysia, it's very clear. I have been asked what would Malaysia's position be. Obviously, as I mentioned, we have a very clear one China policy. And secondly, as firm respecters of international law, were this unfortunate event to occur, we will give full effect to our international obligations. It's as simple as that. So I would hesitate to draw a parallel between Russia's action in the Ukraine and what potentially China can do in Taiwan, because it's you're basically comparing apples and oranges, because Taiwan is not an independent state. As simple as that.
Thank you so much, Dato' Raja. Since actually the organizers and another person, just two questions. Yeah, please go ahead.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Major Muhammad Shamsul Akmal bin Muhammad Saidi, and if I may, I would like to point this question to Your Excellency, sir. In order to gain mutual understanding and trust from ASEAN nations, I believe that trust should go to public support as well, especially from the ASEAN public community. Therefore, how will the EU convince the ASEAN public communities that this partnership is essential and an imminent need? That's all.
Thank you. Yes.
Good morning, sir. I'm Deputy Commander Sheikh Pandey from Indian Navy. My question is to our Excellency European Delegate. Sir, the member states of ASEAN practices very diverse political system, and with their very contrast individual multilateral and bilateral engagements with other parts of the world. Do you think that European Union, with its framework, the current framework, will be able to accommodate whole of the ASEAN, or will it be constrained by its framework to be limited in its engagement with only few countries of the region? That's all. Thank you.
How we build trust is first, as I also referred to my speech, by deepening our understanding of each single nation and offering solutions. I'm not going now to say that we are the number one contributor to ASEAN as a regional organization with our support, know-how, and financial means. Neither I'm going to add that we are the number one in development assistance in the nations that they still need in ASEAN, including humanitarian aid whenever it is needed. Because somehow I think this is the European DNA, and ASEAN countries take this not for granted, but they assume it's going to come when there is need. But it is the ability to understand what is the point of view of every nation, to understand why, for example, Malaysia is objecting on European Union's green laws that may affect the country, and offer solutions and pragmatic solutions. So be able to whatever request is coming towards our end, to be able to have a response and a swift response. Besides that, there's no doubt that we need to enhance our presence, our visits and engagement with the region. It happens when one ASEAN country gets the ASEAN chairmanship, but we need to enhance that. We have launched dedicated, now we are strategic partners. So therefore, I think that we have already a very comprehensive structure of relationship. Actually, if you see the EU ambassador to ASEAN mission statement, he has to follow something close to 75 dedicated dialogues. But the thing is, how these dialogues, they reach out to the public, and how the ASEAN people understand how closely we are interlinked, and what solution, how we can tailor-make solutions to each nation's needs. So we are at the stage where now we have the means, including in countries that they have an upper middle income status like Malaysia. So I'm very hopeful that the next few years you will see a shift and a true prosper in EU, ASEAN, but also with individual member states. And it is closely linked to the question if we want to work with a few countries or with ASEAN as a whole. And that brings also to the challenges that ASEAN has and the level of integration, or how they view eye to eye on big political issues, including the war, or let's say, we haven't spoke about it, Myanmar. It's a big issue for ASEAN, and how we will address a military junta that is behaving the way it behaves. I'm not going to use any adjective here. But it is essential that we carry on, as you said, with the ones who are willing to go ahead with us. We have already, for example, on the free trade, we have concluded 2, Vietnam and Singapore. We are negotiating with Indonesia, we're close to conclusion. We relaunched with Thailand. We announced we're relaunching with the Philippines. Hopefully Malaysia is coming as well. But the ultimate aim, and this is very clear, it is a region to region. But at this moment, we know that some countries, they don't have the same level of development level of ambition. So the European Union, through the free trade agreements, we want to create a true win-win for every country and every region, and not the lowest of the low denominators. That's why we are hesitant yet to engage, although it is the ultimate aim, and we have put this in writing and as ambition. But besides that, we can see we do already military operations and naval exercises, and we have security, or ASEAN member states, they participate in our Atalanta missions and others that we do. It happens individually, but the door is open also to ASEAN. And besides that, I will add one more point. It is a big issue which is about the security of supply chains and sustainability. And there we have shown leadership. The leadership has been misunderstood. Maybe it was not communicated well, because it created grievances to local economies and that about this transition. But it offers also a great opportunity to fight climate change, to bring SDGs, and also to address bilaterally where each nation needs to do a little bit more. So we are ready to offer that, and we are ready also to do the technology transfer and to create a dedicated partnership. So our goal as the most comprehensive, let's say, regional organization entity, it's a union, it is obviously to work hand in hand and advance as EU and ASEAN together in all aspects, but as building blocks, we will, and this is also the case of Malaysia, every area that is mentioned either to me or to our fellow EU ambassadors that we need to progress, we need to move ahead, and even with the Global Gateway, which is our World Fund for supporting major infrastructure issues, we are ready to do it first bilaterally with the ultimate goal of EU-ASEAN true partnerships on all aspects.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. With that, we will end our panel discussion. Before that, I would like to express our sincere thanks, gratitude to the panelists. Let us give them a round of applause. I'm sure the last one.